Welcome to Visionaries. I'm your host, Jacob Wolf, an award-winning investigative journalist and the CEO and founder of Overcome. Each week, we welcome on some of the most high-profile and successful people from gaming, esports, and online culture, and have sobering conversations about influence, power, and the internet. Today, we're talking to Maya Higa, conservationist who's using her content creation career to give back to exotic, endangered birds. After growing up on a farm in Northern California, where her parents started their own nonprofit using farm animals to bring happiness to special needs kids, Maya followed in their footsteps. In college, while volunteering at a zoo, she found a love for birds of prey. She'd also begun doing some content creation on Instagram, where she'd record herself singing. Eventually, though, after meeting strangers turned new friends on online chat room Omegle, they convinced her to stream on Twitch. After singing on the platform for a little bit, she eventually brought a hawk she had rescued on to stream. A massive Reddit thread of a clip, and a short time later, Maya was officially Twitch's bird girl. Today, she's the founder of the Alveus Sanctuary, an Austin, Texas-based nonprofit that's rescuing exotic birds. She's raised more than $600,000 for the sanctuary via Twitch, and she still maintains a full-time streaming schedule, something we asked her about balancing. Maya Higa, welcome to Visionaries. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Visionaries Episode 3. We are going to be joined, and she's already here because she's a great guest and our first on-time guest, which is lovely. I love it when it all sorts out and everybody's on time and we don't keep the space listeners waiting. No shade to our previous guests because they were also excellent, but a little bit of shade. Anyway, we are welcomed this time by Maya. Maya, as I'm sure people in the space know, but maybe not, Maya is a conservationist. She does a lot of different good nonprofit work with animals and has been doing it over a long period of time. I was watching your stream today as well, Maya, cooking, which is always fun. I love cooking streams, actually. That's like my guilty pleasure of YouTube as well. Sweet. Just like watching cooking videos. First, thank you for joining us. I appreciate having you here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. I've never done a Twitter space before. So we'll see how it goes. I don't know.
First time for everything.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, I went back and I watched your Drawing My Life video. I listened to the podcast with your mom that you did last year as well. But maybe for the people in the space that are unfamiliar and listening to this that are unfamiliar with your background, how did you get started into the world of animal work and just generally helping animals and what you do now professionally?
Great. Yeah, great start. So I grew up on a small farm in California in the Bay Area. Hobby farm, nothing industrial. We didn't sell anything. We didn't have any crops. It was just rabbits and guinea pigs and chickens and horses and sheep and goats and pigs and blah, blah, blah. So we just had a bunch of animals growing up always. I went to school for agriculture. So I expected to go into the livestock industry. And when I was in school studying agriculture, I started working at zoos. I started volunteering at zoos because I went off to school and I didn't have any of the animals in my life anymore, and I missed being around animals. So I was trying to find places that I could volunteer, found a zoo, and then fell in love with exotics at my first internship at a zoo in Central California. I went to Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. So started working at zoos, got really into exotics, got really, really deep into conservation really fast. Fell in love with birds at that zoo as well. I was never super into birds growing up, but I met some really cool falcons and hawks and stuff at that zoo, and I became a falconer and started rehabbing a bird of prey, a red-tailed hawk, started streaming, brought the red-tailed hawk on the stream, and then, that's how my channel got on Reddit for the first time, and that's how everything started. That's how everything started growing.
Yeah, I heard you mention that you got clipped and put on live stream fails. Live stream fails is always this place that I think most streamers dread being on because it's usually for doing something really stupid or like, it's in the name of the subreddit. It seems like, though, in your case, that was, at least at the time, a force for good, gave you like a lot of broad exposure. What was that experience like? That first moment that you kind of started to gain more audience size for having a bird of prey on stream, which obviously is abnormal to the platform.
Yeah, it was absurd. I don't have the numbers, but the rate at which my channel grew at the beginning from that exposure from LSF was insane. So it was super overwhelming at the start. There was a while where I thought that I was just gonna quit because I was like, this is too much. Like, this is because I never got into streaming thinking that it was gonna be a career, right? I went live
Yep.
to do like some music streams because I was bored and lonely and whatever. But I never meant for it to be my career. So once I started blowing up, I never thought about it like that. I was just like, this is a lot. Like, so yeah, it was overwhelming, but I mean, I am what I am today because it started there because of LSF. So I'm grateful for it.
Something that was really clear to me in researching for this is the relationship you have with your mother. Very clearly, like, tight knit and bonded. And your mom was funny on the podcast that the two of you guys did together last year.
Yeah.
And something you mentioned in the Drawing Your Life video is that when you were younger, I believe in second grade, if I'm not misremembering, your mom had to deal with cancer, and you had to see her fight through chemo. Maybe some of the people in the space aren't familiar with my life story, but I've also had traumatic parental experience that sort of, pushed me to grow earlier. And you and I are about the same age. I'm a year older. And so
Mhm.
I want to ask about that, because you are like very advanced to your career for being a 24-year-old. And I want to ask if you think sort of what you went through at a young age dealing with your mom and seeing her in that vulnerable position impacted sort of your life career and the way that it pushed you forward.
Yeah, I mean, I could do a lot better with this. I could make a big story out of it, but to be completely frank, I was in second grade. I had no idea what was going on. When my mom had cancer, the only thing that I remember is she got her double mastectomy and she was going through chemo. She ended chemo, and then she told me when she ended chemo, she was like, "All right, I'm done with chemo. I'm cancer free. I'm gonna go back to work." And I cried. I was like, I I literally told her I was in second grade, right? So kind of messed up, but I was like, I don't want you to stop having cancer because you have to go back to work. And I liked when she was home because I hung out with her a bunch. So I did not know what was going on clearly at that time. But my mom is, she's an incredibly strong woman. She's a leader. I get that from her. I get my stubbornness from her. And a lot of that, I mean, I'm sure can be attributed to her being a survivor. It's a pretty big part of her life. But yeah, me and my mom are super close. I have three other siblings, and I've always been close to my mom. Got really close to her after I went to school, after I went off to college. But I think a lot of people have that with their parents.
It's almost this level of respect, and you could just hear it in the way that you all talk to each other, even on a podcast, which is like obviously a little more manufactured than your like private conversations with one another. But you could hear
Yeah.
that there's a level of respect, especially because some of the things she's proud of you about are things that come from her. And I want to talk about that a little bit, the impression that she made on you in terms of her own work with wildlife and being able to give back. Walk me through that, like how that impressed on you and now is your life's work.
Yeah, sure. So in 2009, my family founded a nonprofit. And it's essentially an animal therapy nonprofit. So we had all of these animals in our backyard, and my mom wanted to be able to share them with people that needed them more than we did. So kids with special needs, kids in the foster care system, we would take them to elderly homes, things like that. And yeah, in 2009, they founded the nonprofit for that. They've since moved out of our backyard and to a facility in its own. I've done fundraisers for that facility as well. But the gist is they have kids come to the site. Kids with special needs come to the site to interact with the animals, hang out with the animals, and they bring animals on mobile visits, mobile barnyard visits to schools that have programs for kids with special needs, foster care systems, um, senior centers, hospitals, things like that. So my mom and dad, they both worked full time growing up, and they ran the nonprofit at night. So they're constantly on the grind. Also, something that was deeply, deeply burned into my brain, and I'm like that as well. But I completely lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? Oh, how it impressed on me. Me and my mom share a passion for animals. None of my siblings are into animals in the same way that I am. They are into soccer and sports and construction and stuff like that. But me and my mom are super similar, and we both love philanthropy and we both love to work. So I pretty much just took everything my mom did and tried to do it myself. That's what I founded at 22, and my parents helped me a ton with developing the nonprofit, and I could not have done it without their help at the beginning too, over a year ago.
I don't want you to dox your parents, but I do want to ask a little bit about where you're from, because to be able to have wildlife, I would guess in California with zoning laws, requires you to be in somewhere that's not near a major city. And I want to pivot that into talking about. So I actually first, where you're from in Northern California, what would you guess like population size is? Like how big is your
Oh my gosh,
hometown?
I have no idea. Like I genuinely have no idea.
Small town, big town. Like what? How would you say?
It's a medium-sized town. It's nothing crazy. It's not Austin, but we also never had wildlife. It was barnyard animals. I grew up on an acre, so
got it.
Nothing crazy.
In terms of because I deal with this a little bit even too, and I'm far less successful than you are. And but I come from like a suburb of Atlanta. Most of the people that kind of come out of our neck of the woods originally are athletes. Those are the people that end up being the most successful: football players, baseball players, etc. And it's weird to be like someone that's hyper successful that's from like a small town, right? And then has like is a micro celebrity on the internet, etc. And I want to ask you about your experience with that. When you started to grow this career after that live stream fails moment, and your streaming career and content creator career started to grow, what is some of the feedback that you got from both your family, but also people you knew growing up?
My case is unique for a streamer in that all of my socials, because I never meant for it to be the career. I never meant for streaming to be my career. All of my socials have been my socials since middle school. It is my account is my personal account, and it's my name, my actual name. I never had a username. It's always just been my Higa, right? And I just doxed myself right off the bat. So everybody knew, everybody saw, everybody that I follow, when I had my normie Instagram, probably had like however many 100 followers, right, of just hometown people. So they all saw it. They all saw the come up. Some of them, I've talked to some of them. If I see them in person, they're like, "What's all this? This is crazy," but it doesn't feel that weird. I don't know. No one's been too weird about it. It's been really interesting. I don't have a lot of friends that I've kept from high school, so if I've talked to anybody about it, it's been very brief. Otherwise, I don't know what they think about what happened. They're probably just really confused.
I know that you started mostly singing on Twitch before the sort of having a falcon on or having the bird on the stream. But how did you choose Twitch as sort of your platform to desire to do this as a hobby at first before obviously the success that you've garnered there?
Yeah, crazy story. I had no idea what Twitch was before I started, let alone OBS, Stream Elements. God, none of that, right? I was on Omegle one night and I met guys that were Twitch streamers, like a few viewers playing Destiny or whatever game, and I became friends with them. They got me to download Discord, so I would talk to them on Discord. It was like this group of guys, and they're gamers, which I know nothing about games either, but I would talk to them on Discord, and then we followed each other on Instagram, whatever, and they saw my singing videos on Instagram, and they were like, "You should stream on Twitch." So they walked me through the OBS download on my MacBook Air and told me what mic to get and told me what camera to get and all that, and it went from there. But I would have never picked Twitch on my own. I didn't know what it was, so that's all them. They made me.
How much time do you think in a given week you're investing in Twitch right now specifically? Because I know you put a lot of time into YouTube and vlogging and other things as well.
Streaming itself, not a lot. I mean, I stream 4 days a week for like 3 to 6 hours at a time. So the hours live is not that much. The hours spent offline on Twitch or thinking about Twitch or Twitch related is, I don't want to know what that number is. It's disgusting.
I want to ask about how you think this is something we talked to Atrioc a little bit about last week, and he had a really good answer about this too. Twitch is a platform that struggles with user retention. It struggles with monetization as well, because it's like it almost feels so up and down. It's not very consistent, whereas YouTube is kind of the opposite. Obviously, you're successful on both. It's something he was talking about was that he used Twitch almost as a feeder system to get people to YouTube for him and to build that as sort of a vertical, although he kind of did it somewhat unintentionally with this story. But I want to ask you about that yourself. How do you prioritize what you're putting first when you were creating content, and how are you using them against one another to drive people to other content?
Yeah, that's a good question. Atrioc is definitely better at that kind of thing than I am. Very smart man. Twitch is my main platform. So all the content that I do on Twitch too that's not conservation education related is meant to funnel into my conservation content. So the most important thing on my channel is teaching people about animals, is Alveus, the nonprofit, spreading conservation messaging to as many people as possible. But everything else is kind of means to an end. Everything else is to grow my brand so that Alveus is bigger. So videos on YouTube, the hope is that it drives to my Twitch channel. It's probably smarter to do it the other way around. That's what Nick Pollum is doing, that Atrioc is doing, right? You want to drive people to your YouTube channel. But for me, I like Twitch the most as a platform. I like streaming the most. I don't like filming content for YouTube offline. In fact, I don't ever really film content for YouTube offline. So Twitch is where it's at for me. All my other platforms, Instagram, Twitter, again, just to help grow my brand and to sell, and TikTok. I don't even want a TikTok. I really only have one because my agent convinced me that I should have one. And I don't think that there's much translation that happens there from TikTok to any other platform, but there's potential for education if it grows. So it's there.
I feel like you're in a unique position as a content creator that's like, obviously you do game from time to time, and a lot of the people you create content with are gamers, right? Like you're in that category of people that do the bulk of your content is not gaming, but it's to the same audience. I feel like a lot of the time. First, do you think that's fair? Like, do you think you're sort of in the same lane as a lot of the gaming creators?
No.
No? Okay.
No, gosh, no. I don't. I only game if it's something that I'm asked to do, or it's for a campaign or an activation or something. I don't game ever. I don't know anything about them. Do I share audiences with gamers? Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And your social circle is mostly gaming creators as well.
For sure. Yeah. Well, just chatting creators that play games sometimes. Creators.
A lot of them that started in gaming though, right? Like
yes.
I watched like one of your more recent pieces of content with S-Fan, and like obviously Cutie and Ludwig and some of the others that you're like regularly doing stuff with. Those people come from gaming. That's sort of their origination. They may be just chatting now, and I think that's obviously the bigger vertical on Twitch. Now is IRL and just chatting, but a lot of these people definitely started as gamers first, which is really interesting. And so back to what I was originally going to ask, which is about TikTok, because it's something that I think for what you do, even more so than like what we talked to Atrioc about last week and sort of his interest in the platform. Gaming hasn't quite found its lane on TikTok, but animal videos are sort of the core of TikTok, right? Like the internet is made of cats, and that's no more apparent than on TikTok. And so I want to ask you about like what I know you just said you don't want it, but when you think about the ability to grow what you're doing, how do you think about short form content more generally?
I think that TikTok is hard to monetize, and it's hard to translate and to get people to move to your other platforms. For my purpose though, I think TikTok's a great platform for education. If you're not wanting to make money off of it, you're not trying to grow as a creator, if you're just trying to get eyes on something that you're trying to share, then yeah, TikTok is it. I'm giving a presentation on different social platforms at a conference next week, and I'm talking about the difference between all the social platforms and how you can leverage them for conservation education. And TikTok is one of the ones that I'm going to push the most to these conservation organizations. Is short form content, get your message in, have an animal on screen, put it out there. The numbers on TikTok are ridiculous. They make no sense. But it's not going to gain traction for your organization, I don't think necessarily. There are some people that blow up on TikTok that do really well. There's like that girl that has the cows and stuff. She's Knuckle Bump Farms. She's doing fantastic on TikTok. She's gaining traction for sure. But I think that's an anomaly.
I want to ask about that conversion, because I think Twitch actually may be the best at that, right? When you are live and you're raising for your own sanctuary, or you're raising for another animal related nonprofit, etc., the interactions are about doing good, but they're equally as much about you and your personality, right? And being able to have a donation message read, or having you do some type of perk, etc. Charity streaming is something on Twitch that is an anomaly in the world of content creation, because getting somebody to click through a YouTube descriptor, or like in the YouTube description to a link to donate, it like the CTR is, the click-through rate is not fantastic, and it feels like it's much better on Twitch. And I want to ask you about that, because it's still a space that doesn't feel necessarily all that explored. Like Twitch is now launching their own donation platform, which I don't know how much input or like research you've done on that. But what do you think about charity streaming on Twitch in its current state, and also where it can go in the future and evolve?
This is a hard one because I've talked to lots of organizations see the success of Alveus, conservation organizations, right? I have lots of connects with people like that, and they see the success of Alveus on Twitch, and they're like, I want to do that, right? Or I want to have a podcast, or I want to do this on Twitch, and I want to fundraise, and they expect to replicate the success of what Alveus is, but Twitch is so hard. I feel bad recommending Twitch as a platform to pretty much any organization unless I'm recommending that they have live cams up 24/7 and they're not really curating content. Because to ask a regular conservation education organization that has a board of directors full of boomers to download OBS and get a cam and a mic and put your desktop audio on this and and then get mods and get in chat and go live and change your title. It's just, it is so much to understand. And it's really hard to recommend that to organizations. I think there's so much potential in fundraising on Twitch. My big thing is Twitch is an untapped reservoir for doing good, right? Like I say that all the time. But there are so many things that have to align for it to work as well as it has worked in my case. So I wish it was more accessible, but I don't have the answers for how to make it more accessible. I just recommend TikTok. I recommend Instagram. I recommend Facebook. And I don't recommend Twitter, actually, hardly ever, because I don't know. Sometimes it just feels like they don't understand Twitter. Twitter's kind of hard to navigate sometimes. So
also just terrible click-through rates on Twitter. Like you can have a tweet. I was talking about this the other day. I had a tweet that had like more than 3 million impressions for a story I wrote, and like 1,600 people clicked the link. It's like
right,
3 million people saw this. Like,
yeah, the likes on Twitter versus like Instagram or something, right?
You mentioned in that answer these other nonprofit organizations ran by boomer board of directors. You are the youngest guest we've had on this podcast so far of the three. But also I'm a young host, so it blends in well. So I think your perspective on social media platforms, on online fame, etc., may be a little bit different because you're a Zoomer, as am I. And so I want to talk about that a little bit in more depth. And I want to start by, you have talked a little bit about what it means to have to deal with hate, etc., and made a funny video about it a couple months ago about reading sort of hate comments that you faced.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But let's start there in terms of learning to adapt with that, because I've personally been through this. It's hard, like when people are coming at you online. How did you first handle that when you first started getting people that kind of came after you? Because there are always those people, even at your most wholesome.
Mm-hmm. I actually have a screenshot of the first hate comment I ever received. Do you want me to find it?
Sure, yeah.
I'll read it to you.
I'm curious how bad it is.
What the date is. It was July 11th, 2019. And it was, how is she even popular? She's like a 3 out of 10, desperately trying to hide it with makeup. I screenshotted that though. It actually did not hurt my feelings. I thought it was really funny. And I screenshotted it because I was like, I want that forever. I'm going to keep that forever. There are definitely things that get to me 100%. There are things that get to me more than others. I don't care when people are like, she's ugly or too much makeup or, talking about whatever else. That kind of stuff doesn't bother me. There are some things about my character that people say that bothers me. There are some things about my organization that people say that bother me. There's plenty of that. But I think there was a point, and I don't know if this is necessarily healthy or a good way to deal with it, but I think at some point something shifted in my brain and I stopped thinking of them as people. Or there were so many, it just kind of started feeling like bots. Like I don't, or if I do think of them as people, if I read something or if I go to a profile or I see a name often and I know that it's a person, I just can't think of it as being like a real person that I could talk to, that that would have the skills or be apt enough to have a conversation. I just it feels so separate. It feels so different from in person. If someone were to say something like that to my face or one of my friends or something, I would be scarred for a very long time. I would cry. I'm a big crier. I would just it would affect me for a long time. But it just doesn't feel like that online. Maybe I'm lucky in that's easy for me to compartmentalize and separate, or maybe it's some sort of unhealthy dissociation. I don't know, but it works. So that's how I do it, I guess.
Was it always like that, or was that something that you developed the more success you saw?
It kind of feels like it was always like that. I mean, the first hate comment I got, I thought was funny. There were definitely things that bothered me, but I didn't get hate for a long time. I was like LSF's golden child sweetheart for a long time. So I didn't struggle at the beginning. Actually, I don't feel like I get, now it's a lot worse. But when I started, I didn't get hate for a long time. Everyone was pretty kind. I also don't read things. The whole like just close your eyes, just don't read it. I don't read YouTube threads. I maybe read a YouTube comment thread like once a month or something. I don't read live stream fails. I don't open live stream fails. I read my chat every day, but my chat's moderated, so it's fine. I don't read Instagram comments or Twitter comments or anything. I just don't read it. I don't read TikTok comments, so I don't see it. Maybe I get a lot of hate. I don't know about it.
I need to take a lesson out of your book because I'm terrible at this, and it sucks because journalists definitely get the brunt of it too. But yeah, I need to learn from you.
Not reading it is the best advice I have.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
You had a quote that you said on, I don't know how many episodes it was again, but on Wine About It that feeds into this, which was, your direct quote was, "I have a pretty negative perception of humanity. When you have that many eyes on you statistically, you're going to get a lot about people." That is your quote, and talking about sort of some of the blowback that you've gotten.
We're pulling out quotes.
I had to research, right? I wanted to have good questions here.
I appreciate it.
What do you mean when you say you have a negative perception on humanity? I know we just talked about, you sort of dissociate and think about these people as bots, but like, do you think that the internet's just like a negative force?
I think oh my gosh, this is such a big conversation, man. Like, do I think people are inherently good or bad? I don't know. I think that people are selfish. I think that people like being on a pedestal. I think people like feeling morally superior. I think people like feeling right. I think people like feeling better. I think that's all natural. And I think online, when there's anonymity and there are people that can rally behind you and validate you being better or you being right or you knowing more, being smarter, being hotter, whatever, I think people step right up on that pedestal. Yeah, I think it's a lot easier for them to do that online. So as for my take on humanity as a whole, I think that the internet makes it a lot easier for people to step into those unfortunate human qualities. But I think that they exist in all humans. So yeah, I just think it happens more online.
Seems like you're a pretty good observer, especially if you're giving a talk in a week about social media and social media habits and presentation. I want to ask you about this, and I more generally, I don't want to fall into any like tropes or anything as well, but how do you think that differs for women than men, being a female celebrity versus being a male celebrity?
Sorry, in what
how do you think that hate and sort of how you deal with it differs from being like a female celebrity versus a male celebrity? What's said to you, how it's said to you, etc.?
Oh, sure. I mean, vastly different between men and women, of the kind of hate that we get, right? The sexualization of women on the internet, I can't do the exact same things that men are doing. I can't make jokes about kissing my friends, or I can't, or sure. I can't wear something and turn around because then I'm farming, whereas like if a guy were to have his shirt off and twerk, it's funny, right? It's so different. And I think women get blamed a lot more for being sexualized, which is a very confusing thing, or for making themselves or putting themselves in a position where they are sexualized. That sucks. As for how it's dealt with, I don't think that necessarily has to do much with being a man or a woman. I think that's up
sure.
to the individual, how they deal with that. But it is certainly different.
Taking a quick break from this episode to have a word from our sponsors. The journey of my career has been pretty fast-paced. I started writing at 17, and within 16 months, I went from having never written a published article to landing a job at ESPN as their youngest talent hire ever. With that fast-paced career, I've often found myself struggling with imposter syndrome and with work-related anxiety. But over the past few years, seeing a therapist really helped me guide my way. And if you think you may be feeling depressed, stressed, anxious, and overwhelmed, then today's sponsor, BetterHelp, is here to help you. BetterHelp offers licensed therapists who are trained to listen and help you. Talk to your therapist in a private online environment whenever's convenient for you. And if you're like me, where it seems there's never enough time in the day, you understand how important that convenience is. There's a broad range of expertise in BetterHelp's 20,000 plus therapist network that gives you access to help that may not be available in your area. Finding a therapist can be hard, but BetterHelp simplifies that experience. You start by filling out a questionnaire to assess your specific needs, and within 48 hours, BetterHelp will match you with a therapist. From there, it's easy. Schedule video and phone sessions, message your therapist as much as you want, whenever you need to, and everything you share is completely confidential. You can request a new therapist at no additional charge anytime. I've been seeing my therapist Diane for 4 years now, and when we reflect back on the progress I've made in my life for the better, it's a pleasant reminder of why I started seeking help and the goals I had when we first started working together. Join the 3 million plus people who've taken charge of their mental health with an experienced BetterHelp therapist. Get your 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/visionaries. That's betterhelp.com/visionaries. One thing that's really interesting about you mentioned describing getting into streaming for the first time and how you built sort of that initial community, right, that surrounded you, the finding the people on Omegle that were seems pretty good-hearted for the most part.
Oh, they're great. I'm still friends with them.
Yeah, which is surprising considering the platform. I think there's also a lot of bad people on Omegle, obviously. And one thing that I think is difficult for everyone that achieves a certain level of financial success or fame, and especially when you're our age, right? When you're mid 20s or younger, it's really hard to figure out who's in your life for the right reasons. And it's a really constant battle. I want to ask you about how you deal with that and how you assess other people and choose the people in your circle wisely.
Oh boy. I have learned more about this concept in this industry in 3 years than I think anybody should ever have to learn about people. I think that's part of what has made me so cynical. Is at the start of my journey into this industry, I was cool with everybody, like I was just, this person's nice, I like this person, whatever. And it took me years to realize that every relationship that I have, if it is within the industry that I'm in, has layers. Does that mean that they're bad people? Does that mean that they don't like me, that they don't care about me? No, not necessarily. But is there a layer that they want to be my friend because I'm successful on Twitch? Yes, and vice versa, right? So it's just something that I need to think about. And you kind of learn as you go, who's better about that, who's worse about that. But I've kept my circle very small at this point for that reason.
How did you build the relationships you have now, right? Because some of the people that are in your life more regularly, like someone like QtCinderella, obviously incredibly successful. How did you build those relationships and start to realize that there was something more than just being colleagues with some of those people, but truly being deep down friends? Because the dynamic from listening and watching the content you two produce together, especially Qt, it seems like it's big sister or little sister almost. Like you two get along really well, and there's a very, very unique dynamic. But how did you realize that was more than that relationship and other relationships, more than just work colleagues who do similar things, to being truly a friend?
Yeah, Qt's my best friend in the industry. We were never tight until about a year ago, and we had lots of conversations about deep things that were going on in our lives. And I think one of my big general litmus tests is if I got perma'd, would I still be friends with this person? And the answer for Qt is absolutely. So that's something that I realized pretty early on in my friendship with Qt. And we talk every day, pretty much every day, on the phone for like hours and hours and hours. And it's about much more than stream, right? We just know everything about each other. We're great supports for each other, and we're fantastic business partners. We've both helped each other immensely to grow and build a brand and, create events and all that. We just make a really good team. So that's something that I think about in the people that are in my circles. I like to be aware of that kind of thing, as if I wasn't a creator my size, would I be friends with this person? And I'm friends with a lot of people where the answer is no. But it's okay. I like hanging out with them, right? So but yeah, Qt's definitely an exception to people in the industry.
I want to talk about this, and I don't want to dive deep into your personal life and relationships and everything else. But that quote that I read earlier was about talking about what happened with Andrea Botes at the Beyblade tournament, and what she said to you. That's where the negativity quote came from, and the way that you thought about it. I don't want to dive into sort of your personal life and everything, but I do want to talk about when you made the Drawing Your Life video, you talked about a breakup that you had in high school that was incredibly traumatic for you, because it was very public. And obviously now you've gone through similar stuff, and for someone to say something like that to you as well, I'm sure stings. And so I want to talk about this not from the lens of what happened, but more so about separating stream from real life and how you deal with that. Because I think our generation, Zoomers, have a really natural tendency to overshare, because we came up at a time where, you know, it feels like social media was totally innocent, right? Like I remember thinking everybody was on Facebook was good when I was, you know, in my preteen years, and clearly that's not the case. And so how do you separate from what you share and what you don't share, and how those two things overlap?
I'm trying to follow the progression of this question, because I won't address the first part. I'm not going to talk about Andrea.
No,
me and Andrea are fine. She's Andrea.
Sure.
But then as for the question, like, what do I share and what do I not share? I don't know. It depends. If we're talking about like romantic relationships, like I'll tell my stream sometimes if I like go on dates and stuff. Or I'll talk about something if I'm sad about it, but I try not to talk about behind the scenes with other streamers so that I don't farm drama. Which is why I'm having a hard time answering this question, because it was introduced in a weird drama farming way. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I try not to talk about people on my stream if I haven't talked to them before, or if it's something that can be handled privately. I don't bring up other streamers, because then they see it and then they react to it, and then it's blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I'm not trying to drama farm, to be clear. I was more so talking about because you talked about and have talked about, again, not trying to rehash here, but you've talked about sort of what it's like to be in a relationship publicly and how you share that, and then fallout, etc. And so that's the perspective I'm like was asking about, in terms of being able to think about what is going online and what isn't, because ultimately, like, everything you share online could be used as a weapon. Doesn't matter if it's innocent or not, right? Like,
I think in that case, it just matters for all the parties involved how much you want to share together. I think you run into problems where you talk about people and they're not in on it, you know, and then they're like, what the heck, they said that? Same thing with a relationship. If you guys are both down to do everything public and you're like, all right, you want to talk about that fight we had publicly? You know, sure. And that works for some people, you know, that works for some relationships. But yeah, it's just about the parties involved.
Has your perspective changed over time on what you're putting on the internet, like long term, versus when you started being sort of a creator and having those or having like that success to where you are now?
Absolutely. Yeah. The bigger I get, the less I want to share. And the more careful I am about what I do share. The bigger I get, the less involved I get in drama, in other people's business, and talking about people and reacting to content. I don't react to content really at all anymore. I certainly don't go through LSF. I haven't gone through LSF on my stream in a very long time. I don't react to drama clips. I don't react to tweets. I just don't talk about people anymore, because I have no interest in being involved with it.
So now let's talk about birds. Let's talk about Alveus,
right?
Because I want to ask about that. Because that is it seems like it's a whole nother pillar of your life that you have established and are, you know, building. It's an entrepreneur in a different style than the way that you're doing it now, right? And it's nonprofit entrepreneurism. And so what made you want to take it from fundraising for other people and sort of all the charitable work you were doing as a creator to actually being the charity person yourself and sort of running a sanctuary top to bottom?
Yeah. So I am super glad that I didn't start Alveus before I started the conservation podcast. I think we raised around 80 grand for conservation organizations across the boards. And I got to bring a lot of exposure to those organizations, which I'm super happy about. Once the conservation cast kind of came to a close and I decided to start with Alveus, I think I just realized that that education that I was bringing to the table on Twitch could have been done a lot better, a lot more effectively, could have been brought to a lot more people if I had live animal ambassadors, because that has been one of the most effective things that I've found in teaching people about animals, is them being able to see the animal, meet the animal, know the animal, care about the animal. So that's when I got the idea for Alveus. That's why I wanted to found. And once I started Alveus, there's only so many fundraisers and stuff that I can do for other organizations when I'm running one at this size. So that's kind of how the shift happened. It happened pretty naturally, I think.
How big is Alveus at its current moment? From I guess first, let's start on the financial front of that. Like, what is your fundraising numbers look like at this point, if you're willing to share?
The capital campaign that we did in February, we raised $572,000, I think. And we did $100,000 at the Halloween event. We did $45,000 at the Earth Day art auction. So we've raised a lot through Alveus. But Alveus now has 2 full-time employees, 1 part-time employee, and we sit on about 15 acres, and we're expanding constantly, working on bringing in new ambassadors, building enclosures for ambassadors that come in. Oh my gosh. I just dropped my whole phone. I'm sorry. I hope that didn't break anyone's ears. Yeah, we're just working on expanding and bringing in more ambassadors. And
where have you turned to help to learn how to do these things? Obviously, your parents run a nonprofit here in the animal space, and so I'm sure you've leaned on them. But where else have you leaned on to learn and take lessons away from in terms of building your own thing?
I've worked at a couple different facilities, wildlife care facilities. So I've worked for a couple zoos. I've worked for a couple wildlife rehabilitation centers, equine therapy programs, cat shelters, dog shelters, stuff like that. So and then I've been on the board for a few nonprofits as well. So I kind of understand the infrastructure of a nonprofit, but I have learned so much through founding Alveus, and a lot of it has been trial and error. I have made a lot of mistakes and learned as I was going. Still am learning as I go.
In terms of the amount of birds you're taking care of, how many now are currently at Alveus?
I think around 20, not including, if you don't include all of the insects that we have, because we have 70 or 80 cockroaches and 200 isopods. So if you want to count all them, it's hundreds. But if you don't count each of them, then it's around it's between 15 and 20.
And what is your role like? How do you balance your time? Because obviously you're doing full-time content creation. That's really important to driving, success to the nonprofit as well. You are the main brand ambassador yourself for the brand here. But you're also having to do sort of more of the procedural stuff and be the person that, be the founder, be the person that's taking care of all these things as well, and making hiring decisions, I would imagine, and bringing in, people that you trust to work on this project. How do you balance your time between all of that?
Yeah, I've never worn this many hats in my life. I do content creation, I do facility planning, I work with contractors, I do facility design. I have the 2 full-time, 1 part-time, so I manage them. I manage fundraising, I help with permits, I do legal, I do payroll. How do I balance my time? I don't know. I mean, I don't take any days off. I'm at Alveus between 6 and 7 days a week, but I do thrive off of working, so that's a good thing. But it's either my stream or Alveus work, and very little time for other things. But the beautiful thing about my career and about Alveus is that there's nothing that I would want to do more. If I had a normal job at a desk, what I would want to do in my off time is be around animals or work with animals or ride my horse or be around. So it's what I want to do anyway. So that makes it a lot easier.
I think the people that are driven by passion, the people that like us who are fortunate enough to be driven by passion, right? I love what I do and you do too. As you just said, we are very lucky. We're very privileged in that position. But it doesn't mean we're immune to burnout. And so I want to ask about that a little bit. How do you deal with burnout? Because you just said you don't take days off. And so how do you mitigate that? Because even though you are so passionate, it's easy to kind of feel exhausted and overwhelmed.
Yeah. I have yet to feel a severe burnout. I'm constantly leading up to it. Or I constantly feel like it's gonna happen, or there are days where I'm like, this is it. Like this, it's gonna happen. Like this is really gonna happen. I'm gonna lose motivation for like weeks or like days. Like I'm not gonna be able to work. And every time it builds up to that point, I freak out about it, and then it just kind of goes away. So I haven't gotten a full burnout yet, but I mean, I'm in therapy. You know, I've been seeing a therapist for years. I see a therapist once a week. So we talk about that. We try to manage my stress there. And there are things in my life that I need that are pretty grounding. Spending time with my horse, spending time with my friends. I really do like cooking. Now that's turned into a content piece as well. But um, there are things that I do on a personal level by myself that help a lot. But to be honest, I do expect at some point the rate that I work at, I'm aware is unsustainable. So buckle up. I don't know. We'll see. I'll get there someday, but not anytime in the near future.
In terms of hiring and taking off a little bit of that load of yourself, you mentioned you have an agent, right? I personally have also found that for myself to be quite helpful to have somebody run at least some of the business affairs or be involved in some of the business affairs. But it seems like, you know, I don't expect your agent to be able to know how to care for a bird. Like that's a whole sort of other skill set, right? And so in terms of sort of hiring other people, figuring out like who in your life can take over some of these things that require such a wide range of skill set, how do you evaluate that when you're like bringing on other people? And I guess where are the pain points there too? Like where have you not found people that you need help with?
I think I do a really good job at delegating actually at this point in my life. So I have 3 people that work at Alveus. I have Connor, who does some animal care. He helps me with a ton of permitting. He does content. He does tech. He does everything. So Connor's Alveus' operations manager. Alveus couldn't be anything near where the scale of what it is today without Connor. Kayla is animal training and program manager, or animal husbandry and training program manager. She helps a ton with training our animals, so I don't need to make training programs for them. She has eyes on them 5 days a week. She cares about them as deeply, if not more deeply than I do. So I can trust her completely with their welfare. So I never need to stress about if the animals are okay. Same thing with Ella. Ella works part-time as well. She's animal care coordinator, and she has the exact same aptitude as Kayla for taking care of these animals. She knows these animals. They both do. So that takes a ton of weight off my shoulders. I have a production team of 5 for Alveus. I have a TikTok editor, a YouTube editor, a social media manager, a production tech, and an artist in that team. And they help me 360 with that content for Alveus. So whether it's merch, whether it's building bots, whether it's getting a website built, whether, everything that Alveus needs, I talk to them daily. I could not exist. Alveus could not exist without that team. I have an assistant, a personal assistant. That's kind of a new hire for me as well. She's great for my personal stuff. So all of these people help me a ton with Alveus. And my personal assistant got me a doctor's appointment and a dentist appointment for the first time since I moved to Texas, because I just don't have the time to do those things for myself. So she's helped me a lot with that, and she's carried me through that. And then I have a management team through Stream Elements. They help me with my stream and handling all that. And yeah, I have lots and lots and lots of people that support me, that work for me, under me, with me. So
I want to ask a couple of different random questions that we'll take audience questions. So first I want to ask about Texas. I'm also an Austinite, and I'm a transplant here from New York,
cool.
But originally from Atlanta and lived in Connecticut in between. I find myself incessantly missing New York City. But you also said that you, in a video that I watched, that you don't miss Northern California really at all, and that you're more happy here. Mm-hmm. Would you ever go somewhere else? And what's your kind of thoughts on Austin and Texas more generally at the moment?
I miss my family in California. I don't miss living in California. Thank God I like Austin as much as I do, because I'm stuck here for a very long time with this facility. This is not a facility that can be picked up and moved anywhere. So I am here for a very long time, but I'm happy about it. The heat is terrible. Most of Texas is terrible, but I like Austin a lot. So I'm actually really happy here. I don't miss the cost of living in California. I do miss the weather. I don't miss the beach, but I do miss my family, and I miss my friends. But I'm in California once a month anyway. The worst part of it, I go to LA once a month, but I do get to see my family often because I'm there once a month, so it's fine. But I like Texas. I like the yeehaw.
A follow-up on that, do you feel like your career opportunities as a content creator, which sounds like throughout this entire interview is backseat to the conservation side of what you do, but obviously they feed into one another, do you feel like you're limited in your career opportunity by not being in California?
No, but it's only thanks to Chance Morris. The only reason that I'm not limited is because there's so many streamers that live here. I have the opportunity for collabs in Texas the same amount, if not more, than I do when I go to LA. So is the industry in LA? Yes. Like, are the business opportunities in LA? Yes. But the creators and the creators in my circle are in Texas. So that has helped me grow immensely. And having a group of friends that also stream here is huge.
I feel that a lot because my industry is New York, LA too. So, favorite Austin restaurant? What's your restaurant recommendation for tourists?
There's a restaurant downtown called Loro. There are ones that I like a lot more, but I'm not going to say them because I don't want them to go there because it's too close to me. They're like, it's not like a nice, they're like food trucks or something, but then I'm going to leak where I am. Loro is really good downtown. ATX, it's spelled Cocina. There's a Mexican restaurant in Austin that's really good too. Yeah. But it's super loud, but the food is really good. And it seems really popular. So that's one that I recommended to someone recently. How's it in Austin? That's all I can think of right now. I don't spend any time in the city, honestly, unless I'm like at bars and stuff.
I'm a big fan of Gus's Fried Chicken is one to go to for the tourist folks downtown, and then Interstellar up near Cedar Park and Lakeline Mall is really great. Second best barbecue in the state. Really, really good.
Cool.
Yeah, we're fortunate. So then I'll ask this question, and then we can go into audience questions. What is your favorite bird and why?
My favorite bird is a red-tailed hawk because
still okay. Yeah.
Yep, still. It's the first bird that it's the bird that got me into falconry. It's the first bird I ever rehabbed and released. I have never met a red tail that I don't like. I think they're beautiful. And yeah, if I could have any bird for myself, not for Alveus, again, if I was getting a bird for falconry, it would be a red tail. So it's always gonna be red tails.
Nice. I think it's really sweet that the bird that got you into it all is still the one. It's a commitment.
Bird. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're gonna start taking a little bit of audience questions from the people here on Twitter Spaces. We will start with Ethan, my former colleague from .esports, who, just to let you know, Maya, the minute that we booked this interview and announced this, he's like, "Oh my god, I cannot believe you booked Maya. She is my favorite." So there you go. You're about to have somebody that's a big fan come ask a question. So, Ethan, we have just made you a speaker. Yeah, go ahead and ask your question for Maya.
Kind of mentioned this already before, but I figured I'd kind of ask you a little bit more in depth here. How has your dynamic with other streamers shaped your own career thus far? And do you hold yourself on a scale comparing to yourself to them? Or are you steadfast on ensuring that your content stands out for the work you put into it?
I absolutely credit the streamers around me for my success. I think we're all massive supports for each other and we all help each other grow a lot. We all share a lot of viewers, a lot of community. So I do credit them for that success, and I continue to credit them, this day for helping me, and boosting me all the time. Do I compare myself to them? Not necessarily. We just do very different things. I'm very proud of the lane that I've created for myself on Twitch. As far as I know, or definitely within my circles, I'm the only one doing the kind of stuff that I'm doing. So it's kind of hard to compare yourself to others when you're doing such different things. So it's pretty much all positive.
Thank you for the question, Ethan. Appreciate it. We'll take Adam Antor next.
My question is, what does success look like for you when it comes to content creation? And do you have any 1 year or 5 year goals with content creation?
My very big, not specific answer for you is all successes for me on Twitch is teaching as many people as possible. So as long as I have a bunch of viewers and they stay there when I'm doing the educational content, I'm thrilled. As for a 5-year, 10-year, 1-year plan, it's really hard to say because my career and my nonprofit is all relying on the success of a social media platform, which we know how fickle that can be. So it's really hard to predict what's going to happen. But maybe I move to another platform. It's as long as I can keep teaching a bunch of people online from a bunch of different places, I would consider that success for my purpose as a creator.
I'm going to follow up on that one, actually, before we take the next audience question. Something that you mentioned in the podcast with your mom is that the KPI for success with their nonprofit was the number of smiles put on children's faces. What is your KPI for Alveus?
I don't have one that's that specific. I just completed a research project with Columbia University, their Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology, on my Animal Quest series, where I spotlight each of our educational ambassadors, and we were gathering metrics for the age of those viewers and the attitudes that they had towards our ambassadors before and after seeing them on screen, just to see how effective having live animal ambassadors for education is. So we'll have some actual metrics there, and I'm excited to quantify that. But for my stream, all I have is viewers. All I have is like viewership. It's like I did this episode or I did this Alveus stream and we averaged 10,000 viewers. That's fantastic. Or we averaged 6,000 viewers. Cool. So that's the only metric that I have. I don't have anything cooler or like cuter like my family's nonprofit does.
One more question on that too. Despite obviously our generation having the most access to the internet of any generation before it, right? We are almost born online in the sense that it's such an early part of our formative lives. We are very siloed in a way too. Our generation has a really bad habit, I feel like sometimes, of sort of putting ourselves in these niche communities and not really expanding our horizons and what our interests are sometimes. I meet this a lot with a lot of young people that I encounter. And so I want to ask you how you think about breaking that wall and what you think the biggest misconception about endangered animals is, and how you better educate and break that wall.
One of the things I'm most proud of with using Twitch as my main platform is the demographic that I'm able to reach in teaching about conservation, because you're right. The people that are on Twitch, mostly young men, are not looking for conservation education necessarily, right? Maybe a nature documentary here or there, but it's not something that they're looking for, despite it being very important, right? Because they are budding consumers. They're learning to make their own choices as a consumer, and that's a big deal. So for me, one, everybody loves animals. I think the biggest thing with having animal ambassadors and introducing them to the animals is everybody can like and appreciate Georgie the frog. Like, they'll fall for the frog. They love the frog, And so giving them the opportunity to get to know that animal through these live streams helps them a lot and makes them want to care about that frog's wild counterpart and care about what's happening to these frogs in the wild. Because if you make them fall in love with Georgie and then you say 33% of all amphibians are endangered, they're going to be far more sad than if you just said 33% of amphibians are endangered. Yeah. That doesn't matter to them. But then when they think about it and they think about Georgie, there's an emotional attachment, which makes them far more invested. So I think it's tapping into people's love for animals and giving them the chance to make that connection.
Yeah, there's all this like dopamine release that exists with animals in particular, right? And I think that's why content works around animals more generally. Back to the TikTok conversation we had, right? Like, TikTok is full of these shelters and sort of cat rescues. I follow a handful of these: big cats, small cats, all in between, etc. One of my favorite TikTokers is a big cat sanctuary that takes care of lions and leopards and tigers. Neat. All sorts of stuff. So okay, so next audience question is from Chelsea. Chelsea, you can unmute and feel free to ask your question.
So you've had so many events and things come up in Alveus that you've accomplished, but what has been one of your most memorable moments at these events? And mine was the Stompy plushie release. That was amazing.
Oh, thanks. It was a fun one. Most memorable moments from the events. This is such a random one, but one thing that I it was just like so wholesome and made me so happy was when Simp Mom came and set up all of her like desserts and stuff at my Halloween event. I loved that. That made me really happy. And the Earth Day fundraiser, the painting auction, my friends being there and having so much energy at like SFan and Rich and auctioneering off all of the items was also really cool to see. And I was just so grateful for them, and it was such a hype thing, and it was so cool. And that's a huge one for me too. I thought that was a really fun event.
I love that we are ending on animal questions because those are the best. So,
great. I was literally gonna say it's so embarrassing. My phone's at 3%, and I'm like panicking because I don't have a charger in here.
All right. We're good then.
Okay.
Maya, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. You've been a fantastic guest, and yeah, best of luck with Alveus. I'm sure we're all excited to keep our eyes peeled on what's developing.
Cool. Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening, guys. Kind of cool. All
right. Later, everybody. You can follow the rest of the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. Make sure to check out our past episodes with Atrioc and Marcus Bromander. Both were really, really incredible episodes as well on very different topics than what we talked about today. So we're trying to get people sort of informed on a bunch of various different things. So thank you all so much. We will be live again on Wednesday afternoon/evening. We will be announcing the guests in the next couple days, so stay tuned for that on the Overcome Twitter account, which you can follow. And Amaya, thank you so much again.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.